maybe you can make a like a hand signal or something.
Okay. Welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 22. My name is Jay Oza, and I'm the host of this program. And I'm also a mentor for Coursera's Introduction to Public Speaking course. And this program is loosely tied to the Coursera's course as we promote the show on their discussion forum. I'm based out of Hazlet, New Jersey, which is approximately 50 miles from New York City. And we've been doing this show, and we have a cohort on Google Plus for Introduction to Public Speaking. And I always say that we have 4 objectives. I think I'm going to add one more to this. One of them is that public speaking, as I always say, is hard. It's time consuming, and it can be quite frustrating. And a lot of people just don't get a chance to practice. We talk a lot, but when do we actually get to practice speaking on topics that are somewhat meaningful, somewhat deep? And that's the purpose of this show. So we have 4 or 5 objectives. I just added one more. One is to learn. Public speaking is constantly a learning thing. That's what we do. We speak a lot, and we have to constantly learn how to speak, because every situation is different. People are different, settings different, and you got to be able to adjust. And this is one way to do that. Second is teach. I'm a mentor, and Julie, who's joined us today, is also a mentor, and we have other mentors who join. And part of what we enjoy doing is we also like to learn, but also like to teach others who are trying to become a better speakers, or they just want to improve from where they are. Some of them are actually quite good. They just want to get better, and that's fine. That's what public speaking is all about. The third thing is we also share speeches. So sometimes we will record an informative, persuasive speech and get feedback. Feedback is very important, and feedback is not that easy. Giving feedback and receiving feedback is hard, and this is one way to do that, to have a speech and learn how to receive a feedback and also seek feedback. Fourth is support. This is a support group. We tend to support each other so that it's a low stakes, but you have to make it into a high stakes. So come prepared, come to talk well, and then if it doesn't go well, you can obviously review it. This gets stored on YouTube. You can watch it and then see what you did well, what you did need to improve, and then that's how you get better. And I'll add one more. One of the fifth one is practice. As I mentioned, practice is very important. We do talk a lot, but a lot of our talking that we do is functional. In many cases, I call it small talk, right? We just casually talk to people, which is very contextual. Then the next phase, I call it mid talk, which is many cases at work tends to be very work related. And then the third is what we do here is to elevate the conversation. And I call this big talk, which is you talk about specific topic that normally people generally are not interested in talking about because it's deep. And you do need to prepare for it. So this is an opportunity to do that, to practice. So today's program that I have put together is on political speeches. And I know some people don't like politics, but I think if you want to become a good speaker, you really need to watch political speeches. I think that's where all the best techniques tend to get used, because their whole point of it is persuasion. Persuasion is so important in political speeches. And the 3 speeches that I've included are from the Democratic and Republican National Convention. So this is very US-centric program today. But the reason I've included these 3 speeches, these are high-stakes speeches. These are not the speeches where you're going to see a lot of hits, YouTube hits or views, because these tend to get covered when they're first aired by many networks and widely reported, widely covered, and widely critiqued. So these are very high stakes speech. They could make or break a candidate. They could even make or break a speaker. So I wanted to have a discussion on it because there's a lot we can learn from these speeches. And these are speeches that these are like the Super Bowl of speeches given in front of a large audience in an arena or a stadium in some cases, and then there are millions of people watching it live. So these are the Super Bowl of speeches. They happen these political ones happen every 4 years. There's another one, the State of the Union, but State of the Union are not that high stakes in my opinion, because they've become kind of like traditional. But these are very high stakes speeches. So that's the program for today. And at this point, I'll have Julie introduce herself, and then we'll get started with our 3-minute segment portion of this program. Okay, Julie, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Jay. Hello, everybody. It's morning in the East Coast part of the U.S., and I'm based in Stanford. So, yes, I want to thank Jay because I'm still in here practicing and learning and sharing because Jay makes it possible. And I'm also a student, fellow student, and mentor in the Introduction to Public Speaking course, which is really, really difficult. And I think that for us to be successful, we have to be comfortable and confident about our ways to communicate. So one of the things that I do is on tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we practice speaking, just speaking and making sounds and vocalizing. And so I have many students who started off with telling me they can't even breathe. So it's a small, intimate group of people, and we read, and then we discuss, and we make a commitment. Because my personal theme, our goal is to help people feeling comfortable, confident, and successful. And we just hit a major milestone. We finished the book, Search Inside Yourself, which is Google's offering, open source. You can look it up, Search Inside Yourself. And now we're moving on to another book that is a classic by Stephen Covey. We're going to read it, discuss it, and then make a commitment from it. And that book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the book is online for free PDF, so I invite you to check it out. And so thank you, Jay. That's my introduction today.
Okay, Julie, thank you very much for your kind words. And at this point, we will do our 3-minute speech segment. And the purpose of this is to just practice giving a 3-minute speech on any topic. And this is our opportunity to bring something to this program, everybody who's on it. So I'll go first. So as I mentioned that last 2 weekends, I have attended weddings. And I was looking to have a good conversation with people. And I don't know about the weddings you attend. Unfortunately, the weddings I attend, that does not happen. And the reason for that is, this is something that I've learned, is I don't know many of these people. And it's very hard to get into a conversation with people unless you're introduced. You can just say hi, hello, that happens. But there isn't an opportunity to talk, to go beyond, the 3 things I always talk about, the kind of conversation, how it evolves. One thing is you don't talk to anybody. Okay, that's fine. Obviously, at wedding, that tends to happen. There are different people. You don't know them. It's the first time you're seeing them. The second is you'll have like a small talk saying, hey, how do you like the wedding? You're on the bride side or groom side, things like that, and then that's where it ends. Or maybe most of them tend to be small talk at weddings. They never get beyond that. Rarely you'll get to mid talk where you'll talk about, in my case, I did talk to somebody when I was at Pittsburgh about sports, since I mentioned about, hey, I just casually mentioned that on my flight from Newark to Pittsburgh, there were quite a few Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And then I said, so are you a big Steelers fan? And we started talking about football a little bit, but it never went beyond that. So, and then I attended another wedding, a big wedding in Florida last weekend. And I don't even believe I even had any small talk with anybody. I'm not counting people that I'm familiar with already from my side of the family, the people that I already know. I mean, obviously that happens, but I'm talking about people that I don't know from the groom side. I was on the bride side in both weddings, but I didn't know anybody from the groom side, and there was very little opportunity. So I've come up with something that I want to kind of bring up here. and I was telling this to my wife, that next time when you ever have any type of party or a wedding or any kind of thing, assign ambassadors. That means that, like we have a big family, pick two people, one from my wife's side, one from my side, who knows a lot of people from our side, and then ask somebody else on the other side to also assign two ambassadors. And their job is to get people introduced so that afterwards they can say, well, I met this person, I met that person. There needs to be somebody there who can break that ice. You just can't leave it for people, because what they tend to do is they tend to gravitate among the people that they already know. But if you have like an ambassadors that you've created ahead of time, which I haven't seen anybody ever do this, by the way. I just came up with it from my sister when she just opened her business. They had these people from Chamber of Commerce wearing red jacket in Florida. They call themselves ambassadors. So I came up with this idea that it would be a very good idea, no matter what event it is, when there are people that are different, assign ambassadors. And their assignment is to make sure that different people are having conversations, so they're introduced. You need to know a little bit about them. It's work, but I think it's worth it, because afterwards, people don't remember much. I mean, these were good parties. These were good weddings at a golf club, country clubs, excellent food. But I didn't get the satisfaction that I really got to know anybody. And I thought, for me, that's important, to get to know people. So this is something that you may want to think about next time when you have a party or any kind of where you're bringing different people together. Identify key people who know from people from your side, and then make sure that they have somebody from their side, and make sure these two people get together, and their job throughout the party or the event is to introduce people. And I think if you do that, people who are attending will get a lot out of it. That's what they'll remember. Yes, you can have excellent food, you can have excellent venue, but what people want is connection. And if you can get them connected, they feel like they've gotten something out of attending your event. So try that, and let's see how it goes. Julie, you want to go next?
Thanks, Jay. I like that idea. In fact, why don't we just become ambassadors, self-appointed ambassadors, and go and introduce everybody and ourselves? I do that at a table tennis club. So all of a sudden, there's a lot more women showing up. It's a pretty, guy kind of thing. So thank you. So I have been feeling a little bit sick this week. I had a cough, so I really haven't prepared a speech. So I'm going to talk about what in the introduction is, what does it take for us to be comfortable and confident? And what does, in the theme of success, I think public speaking, just a fear of speaking, is a fundamental human thing. And I personally thought I was doing great with public speaking until I came to this class, because I had a career as a IT programmer all the way up to project manager, and own my own business. I've spoken in front of, one or two people to hundreds of people. And yet I was never confident. I was arrogant. I thought I did great when I came to the class, but yet there was always a gut in my stomach. And what really touched me is I became a mentor. I was invited to be a mentor, and I think I'm the only one who's a mentor who has not completed the class. And because I started this Google community. And then people came out of the woodworks. And one young woman came to me, and she said, from India, and she said she couldn't breathe when she thinks about having to speak to, whether it's one person, or as Jay would say, whether you speak to one person or 100 people, communication is communication. And that was kind of hard, And then later, another young man from Morocco, he said he was an IT manager, and his job was to present. He was part of an outsourced company. His job was attend these Talo meetings well, there's 20 foreigners around the world, and he has to do a status report or present ideas. He had great ideas, but he stuttered, and there were other people. So this fear of public speaking is a human phenomenon. In fact, it's in one of the Buddha's sutras that this is one of the 5 major fears in our human life. So I want to kind of say that you are not alone. This is a fundamental human thing. You're not alone. Don't give up. Just do something. Talk to someone who is supportive, like Jay says. This is a safe group, so it's the Saturday morning group. Don't give up. Have faith. Find someone. Don't give up. Just keep on speaking. And you will be more comfortable and confident. And that will cross over into aspects of your life, in your demeanor, in the way you view the world as being less scary. So just keep on trucking, and these skills will transfer into your personal relationships, your work relationships, and your long-term relationship with yourself. So thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julie, for those that encouragement for people out there who are watching this, that the only way to improve at anything, obviously, is to keep doing it. But not just keep doing it, but also assessing how do you become better at it. And the other thing that that I want to say here is there's people who, like you said, have tremendous fear of speaking. Even though we are, let's say if we had more people there on this, but at the end, you're just talking to that lifeless camera in front of you. So that shouldn't scare you. That camera is not going to come and bite you or anything, right? So you have to kind of reframe it and saying, who am I really talking to? I mean, yes, you have to raise the stakes. That's what I'm saying. That's what this program is. I can't raise it because this is a support group and it's a low stakes, but you have to raise the stakes. Now, that's up to you. Maybe you don't want to, but that's what, when I say raise the stakes, by that I mean that's how much preparation you're going to put into it. And pick one thing, how you want to say it. This is a place that you want to practice. I come up with things. I come up with the program. And here I'm talking to you, Julie, but I could easily be talking to somebody, maybe a politician, maybe somebody who's in the media, somebody who's, it could be anybody and anything and anywhere. And that's what you want to do here. And another thing to point out, and something you said, is that by having the fear, you're hurting yourself, because unless you can speak, you're not going to be able to influence people. And that's a shame, because if you have a lot of ideas and you want to make a difference, the only way you can really make a difference is if you're able to communicate with others. So and that's just not a good way to live after a while. You can't influence decision making, and unless you speak, nothing happens, right? So if you're watching this, we're here to help, and essentially you're helping yourself. Actually, we can't help you that much, but the thing that we provide here is that you get to talk about difficult topics that are really more involved. So it's a way for you to really get out of that shell and saying, you know what, I made it through. And I think we all started a little shaky. And let's face it, public speaking is something you got to keep doing it. It's not something you can just say, I'll just leave it off and come back later. No, you got to really. And one of the things I do tell people is that we do record it, because that's the stakes. If we don't record it, then it's almost like you didn't even talk. This is something that's recorded. You can go back and view it. If it doesn't go well, hey, next time work hard, improve it. Because every time you speak, you're making that impression, and you may not get a second chance. So raise the stakes. Okay, Julie, at this point, I'm going to take a brief pause, unless you have a comment on things that I just said. Otherwise, we'll move to our first segment. Okay, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then we'll start our first segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 22. My name is Jay Oza, and our first segment for this show, we're going to look at Barack Obama's speech in 2004 at the Democratic National Convention. The theme today, as I mentioned earlier, is on political speeches. And I think that if you want to become a good speaker, you do need to, now you will be saying, well, I'm never going to give a political speech and this and that. I understand. Okay, that's fine. You're not going to be speaking in front of an arena. I understand that. It's fine. But these are high stakes speeches. You cannot get anything that has higher stakes than a political speech at a convention, especially keynote. These have to be great speeches. Otherwise, you're not only hurting yourself as a speaker, but you're hurting the person who could become the next president of the United States and one of the leader of the world. So there cannot be any speech that has a higher stakes than these speeches, because at the end, you have to convince the people to vote for your candidate and your party. So these are I believe, the highest stakes speeches that are ever given by anybody. And this particular speech, for those who may not be familiar with, this was a keynote in 2004 in Boston Fleet Center. And this was sort of Barack Obama's introduction to United States and the world. Prior to that, I had never heard of Barack Obama. I mean, I said, who is this guy, Barack Obama? He was a state senator, an obscure state senator. You know, I live in New Jersey. I'd never heard of him. There are so many state senators, different states. And when he was chosen, I got to know more about him, that, you know, here's a person who had attended Columbia, Harvard Law School, and then was a state senator, and his unique background, typical American immigrant background. His history: his father is African from Kenya, and his mother was white from Kansas. And he had this unique background and all the different places that he grew up. So this was a speech where his objective was to kind of introduce himself to the nation, and also to show the Democratic Party how it makes a difference in people's lives. That is and the third objective was to show how John Kerry and John Edwards will help the people if they're elected, both in domestic and foreign affairs. So his ultimate job was to get people to vote for Kerry Edwards' ticket. Okay, so that's his objective. And the speech that this speech, when he gives it, like I said, it introduced him to the nation. And as it turns out, this speech ended up helping Obama more than it helped Kerry. And that we'll see when we review the next speech. The speech really was an outstanding speech. It's full of optimism, full of hope. It's well delivered. It's considered one of the best keynote speeches given, as far as how it elevated Obama from being a state senator. He eventually became a senator, and in 4 years he was the president. I mean, just think about it. This one speech, ROI, probably was one of the highest ROI of any speech ever given. In 4 years, he went from being a state senator to being a president of the United States. That is like the highest ROI you can ever get from that one speech. And he does a lot of interesting things in this speech. Obviously, he talks about his unique background, how he's looking at that America, essentially at the end, we're all similar. We're all trying to better ourselves. And he quotes the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, indivisible rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and all that. And then he talks about how Kerry and Edwards are going to make sure that everybody can achieve that American dream, to make the best of themselves, or at least have that opportunity to do that. And there's one thing, if you notice in the speech, that Obama does not do. And this is quite evident. That's something I didn't notice it initially when I watched this. But I did notice it after watching another speech that was given at the Republican National Convention by Zell Miller, which we'll review next. He never in his speech mentions the name of George W. Bush. Notice that. And that's kind of interesting, and we can have some discussion around that. Why do you think he never mentioned his name? So he keeps the speech very optimistic. It's a nonpartisan speech, sort of saying, hey, this is what Democratic Party does. We're not like the other guy. We have, we don't jump into rush into wars and all of that. That a Democratic Party kind of brings everybody together. It's a very all-inclusive type of a speech that he's giving here. And at the end, as I said, this speech goes on to help Obama when he runs, even though this speech was given in 2004, but this is the speech that sets him up as the Democratic leader, somebody up and comer, but nobody knew that this was so, the speech had such an impact that in 4 years, he was able to go from being a senator to becoming the next president of the United States. So it's a 18-minute speech. It's well delivered, probably one of the most well-known keynote speeches ever given. And as I said, this has one of the highest ROI of any speech that has ever been given by any person. Julie, do you have any thoughts on this speech?
Yes, thank you. I've seen both this speech and the Republican speech, and one of the things that really came out is the differences in tone. The Obama speech is very positive, unifying, and just hopeful, as he says, and I think you're right that the ROI, the return on investment, was for Obama. And I think I came from Illinois, and I think Obama has a reputation of being very self-supporting or self-serving. In terms of the speech, and also he was one of the youngest senators ever. So I think this was only his first or second term, maybe his first term at that time. I have been working on looking at passion and body language. So one of the things that was very clear is his absolute positivity is radiated. His posture is very tall but light, buoyant. His eyes are always not really super focused, but kind of open and direct, right? And then his use of his hand gestures are really brilliant. For example, he will have palms up for some things, palms down for some things, and there are moments when he uses his palm sideways, and that's very unconventional. You don't see speech makers do that. And then he actually makes this the index finger to the thumb, and this is a very classic mudra. It's used a lot when people meditating, and you can see it makes a complete circle. So this so he aligned his hand gestures, his body movement, and his eye totally incongruent with his message. And I just want to take a moment and say also his voice was very upbeat. Again, very congruent with his message. So, we always say so much of our perception of someone is created before, in the first 10 seconds we see them or whatever. And so when you see someone like Obama, you already get that message of buoyant, open, and connected. I think at the end, for final emphasis, only one time I saw him actually did this, and this was at the end when he said, "We do what we must," and that was the only time. So that is generally considered could be rude, right? but it's also a power gesture and an emphasis gesture. So I think he used it very economically, but very effectively. His body gesture was very effective in alignment with his message. So thank you.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Julie. The one thing I noticed in this speech, and I think you look into this, I did not see that much humor in this speech, and this is something interesting. People don't know Obama, right? Most people are being introduced to him for the first time. And when that happens, humor is something where people have to get to know you before they start appreciating humor. Uh, as we'll see with Bill Clinton's speech, where humor is very important there because they know Bill Clinton. They have known him for many years. When people know you, you could be a little bit more liberal with humor. But when people don't know you, you got to be very careful because humor connects in a way, it's a kind of hit or miss. And the only humor that I saw in that speech that Obama gave, in Obama's speeches, when he talks about votes, that votes would be counted at least most of the time, right? He's obviously referring to the 2000 election. I think that's the only part where people really like laughed or were smiling. Afterwards, people were cheering, but they were not like smiling, or they weren't. That's the only place where I saw where he really used humor. I did not see humor elsewhere in the speech. The rest of it, the other thing that I also want to point out here is Obama has an excellent voice. Obviously, he looks good when he's speaking, but the part that makes him such an excellent speaker, he really knows how to control his voice. If you ever see him, he has this, that's a gift. I don't think, like, I don't have it, but he has that voice, and I try to develop it. He really knows how to modulate his voice and how he can emphasize things in a particular way. If you listen to Obama on a radio, he would still sound really good because his voice is really, really, really of somebody who's like a tenor or somebody who's a singer. Also in this speech, one thing I noticed is that he gave this in 2004, and now, of course, we're in 2015. But when I look at that speech, he looks like a president. The way he's speaking and the way his body language, he looks like the person, even though at that time he was a state senator. But the way he's talking is almost like, folks, I'm the president. I'm already the president. I'm here giving the keynote. And I was just like looking at him like, there is no nervousness. This is not, he's not showing like, oh my God, I'm so lucky to be on the stage. He's saying, I'm on the stage now. I don't know how you got to this point, but if I'm on the stage, I'm going to really take advantage of it and show you what my real potential is. And that's something I think we should all keep in mind, that when you get an opportunity to ever get in front of an audience, always look at what you could become, not what you were, or don't like thank them too much for being given the opportunity to talk and all that. You have to now take that, you're on the stage, you got to show them what the possibilities of your potential possibilities are. And a lot of times as a speaker, we don't do that. We're just so glad that we're speaking, and many times we're not even glad. We just want to get it over with. And I think what Obama shows here is that somebody who's gotten this opportunity to give a keynote, and he's going to take it to the next level. And I think that's a very important lesson that we should all take, that when you're getting an opportunity to speak, always look at it as an X+1. Something else can come out of that. If you don't have that as an objective, then my question is, why are you even giving that speech? And that's exactly what happens to Obama. He goes from state senator to a senator and then to a president. So a speech has to be kind of a launching pad to something. If you're not looking at a speech for that reason, as something as a launching pad, then my question is, why are you then giving the speech? Julie, any closing thoughts?
I really, really like what you said. When you get the opportunity to speak, don't be overly grateful. See it as present yourself as what you are already next. And I think that is true. I was always told in corporations that you should dress for not your boss's job, but your boss's job, so that you present yourself as where you want to be. And I think that's a really, really great point. I just put it down in my notes. So thank you. And I think that's true not just in speaking, but in any opportunities in life.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just giving this, like, when I look at Obama's speech, that, my God, this guy really looks like a president. And your speech should be written and delivered as a way that there are people there who have to make a decision about, they're making snap decision on what your future potential is. And a lot of times, the only way they can see that potential is when they see you speak in front of a large, and how you can control this large audience. It's like a ringmaster. You got these beasts out there, and if you can control these beasts, they think of you as like, my God, you even controlling these dangerous animals. I'm saying people are animals, but the way he can control the crowd, the way he can get them all excited, they see that as like, my God, this guy can be the next president. Look at him in front of this audience. And that's what you have to do. And that can even happen even when you're having a one-on-one conversation. You don't want to be what you already are. You want to be what you want to become. And that's what you want to present when you're having the conversation, is what you want to become, not what you already are. Anyway, I think we got the idea. So, Julie, at this point, I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll move to unless you have any parting thoughts. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take a quick break and move to our second segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 22. My name is Jay Oza, and we're now moving to segment number 2. And the theme of this week are high-stakes political speeches, the speeches that are given at national conventions. And this speech is by Zell Miller, who was at that time a senator. Senator from Georgia. This speech was given in 2004. And he's a Democratic senator, and he's giving this keynote at a Republican National Convention. So for those people who are watching this and maybe not from the United States or forgotten or from other countries, let me just give you a little background. So 2004, the election came down between George W. Bush, he was running for re-election, versus John Kerry, who currently is the Secretary of State in Obama's administration. And this was a major coup for the Republican Party to get a Democratic senator to become the keynote speaker at a Republican National Convention. This happens very rarely. And it also drew attention because it's almost like being a traitor to your party. It's one thing to not support somebody, but then to make it so public and go and give a keynote speech is almost like you're making a statement saying that I know this guy better than anybody. I'm in the same party, and I don't think he's ready to be the president. And in my opinion, we saw Obama's speech in 2004. When it comes to keynote speech versus keynote speech, Zell Miller beat Obama, actually, for the speech. That speech helped Obama, but he did not help John Kerry win the election. And that was the purpose of a keynote speech. Zell Miller's objective is completely different than Obama's. Obama was trying to say, hey, look at, let me tell you a little bit about my background, and then look how much Democratic Party can help. He never once mentions the name of George Bush. It's almost like George Bush didn't even exist. It didn't even feel like that John Kerry was running against George W. Bush. Zell Miller takes a completely different tack. He is in an attack mode. His job is to scare the hell out of people, saying if John Kerry gets elected, the whole Al-Qaeda is going to basically take over the United States. That's how he's kind of positioning this. That if John Kerry's elected, then you might as well kind of, just close the shop, and, the U.S. will completely taken over by Al-Qaeda. That's how he's presenting this. That unless you keep George W. Bush in the White House, he's the only last chance you have of keeping the country the way you know it. I mean, the way he starts out his speech by saying about his family, he's a grandfather. He has 4 grandkids, I believe, 4 or 5, and then he's like really looking at their future. And the future that he sees with John Kerry is very scary. And he's trying to convince the people, don't even think about it. Now, obviously, it's a political speech. There are a lot of things he's taking out of context about all the votes that John Kerry made. A lot of those votes are procedural votes. But somehow, when it's a political speech, there are no rules. You just make up your own rules. So his narrative is to scare the hell out of people, that John Kerry is just the wrong guy, even though John Kerry, by the way, is a war hero. So it just goes to show that if you keep saying enough times that somebody is so weak, so weak, so weak, and John Kerry, just so a little bit of, went and fought in Vietnam. I think he served a couple of tours, if I'm not mistaken, and he got an award. He got several Purple Hearts and also a Bronze Star or something. So he had proven himself in the battle in Vietnam. George W. Bush never even served in Vietnam. He was pretty much stayed in the United States in the reserve or something. So when you compare the two, you'd be like, well, of course, John Kerry is the obvious choice. John Kerry, obviously, when he came back, he was so disgusted with the war that he spoke out openly against the war. And what Zell Miller is trying to do is he's using that against him, saying that even though he has a war record, but he's not to be trusted. And he was very successful. And the reason he was successful at the end is that George W. Bush did beat John Kerry. And the difference wasn't that much. It came down to one state, Ohio, where 100,000 votes determined the election. So Zell Miller, very few people know who Zell Miller is. Everybody knows who Barack Obama is. But you have to give it to him in this case that he was very successful in articulating his position on why George W. Bush should be elected, not John Kerry. And another contrast I'll point out is he goes after Kerry. He uses the word John Kerry so many times in that speech. I lost count. And when Obama, of course, Obama's speech came before his, Obama never even once mentions George W. Bush's name. Whereas Zell Miller said that John Kerry is the wrong person at the wrong time for the wrong country, pretty much. And he actually did succeed. So when you look at overall, he achieved his objective, which was to get George W. Bush elected. You may not like his speech, you may not like his tone, you may not like anything about it, but his job was to get George W. Bush elected and to diminish John Kerry as a credible presidential, as a future president, and he succeeded in that. Julie, any thoughts, any comments?
Hi, Jay. Thanks. Yeah. Again, I'm going to look at the body language just because, I want to respect everybody's time. So I'm going to try to keep it to like 3 or 4 minutes. Totally different body language, right? Also, like you said, he was on attack mode. And the feeling was fear and aggression, or fire and brimstone. So how did he project that? His voice was aggressive. It was attack mode voice. His eyes, you could see they were beaming down and focused as opposed to being open. And finally, I find it very interesting that he didn't use his hands at all, right? Very limited and very specific points. And actually, he was very economical and effective. The first time I saw him use it when he said, when he used the repetition that today our risks are huge and we can't expect the Democrats, and he was attacking the Democrats, and that time he used his whole forearm like this, so it looks like a blade. So that was the first time he used it. It was in alignment with the aggression and the forcefulness, and also he was working a lot on fear. The other time I used it up is when he was talking about like you said, he's attacking Kerry carry, carry, carry this. And then he used a hand to go up like this. And he says, I could go on and on and on. So it's almost like he's lifting all these things he could talk about. Um, and finally, he says something like, I can tell you this, and he says, and he uses his hand. But again, most people use their hands like a palm to the heart, like this. But he used it like this. Again, like he's almost using it as a knife to attack his heart. So this implicit energy of this fearful world, and we have to be forceful, carry through. Finally, his chin goes up and down. Um, so in looking at all his speeches, I would say, and then one more time when he's talking about Kerry, and he wanted to show that Kerry was not decisive, he used this motion. Again, it's a very classical motion, pretty universal across all cultures. So at the end, I would say that he did use his hands and his body. His body was much more tense, right? In alignment with the speech very, very well. And I did feel a lot of fear and anger. So that's what I want to say about his body language and how it's in alignment with the message. I think at the end you can see even when he walked away, he was still very, very rigid. Finally, on a totally other point, in terms of timing, I noticed that most of both speakers, because this is a kind of speech, spend a lot of time during the introduction, which is just rousing the people's emotions and connecting the individual to the group. So Obama says, I am part of this wonderful nation of ours. And Zell Miller said, just like you, my family is the most precious commodity, because the Republican Party is about family. He connected it, and both at the end connected the presidency, the individual to it. And so Zell did one more thing, is he said, our President Bush. So he collapsed the time. So it's not like President Bush who will be our president. He just made that a reality. And what Obama did is, that was when he says, we do what we must, you know. So the timing was interesting, but the body language definitely is something I'm trying to work on to create more passion. So it was very instructive for me. Thank you.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Julie. You're absolutely right. His whole body language was anger, like, oh, the Democratic Party, they're the reason. It almost seemed like that they're a bigger enemy than the enemy that they're fighting, actually. That it's the Democrats that don't approve these weapons. I mean, they should just, like, carte blanche, just approve all these weapons that people want, you know, like kids at a candy store. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. The Democrats are like that famous scene from that movie Caddyshack, you know, where the guy says, I want hot dog, I want candy, and the guy says, you'll have nothing and you're gonna like it. and the Democrats somehow act like tough against when it comes to these generals who want everything in the candy in an arms store, right? I want this weapon, I want that weapon, and he was being very disingenuous, trying to show that. And of course, he brought in the name Kennedy, which of course plays really well. The one thing I want to point out is that the speech is a performance. This is a performance speech, right? The people that are in the arena are part of the like, they're actors, essentially. They're supporting cast. And the real audience is out there somewhere who's watching TV and the media. Those are the real audience. All of these other people with signs and all that, they're just designed to create that, to support the speaker, to create the image that what he's saying is indeed the reality. That is the reality. So, when you see these people cheering and all of that, a lot of it is just overplaying. They're just basically know that their role is to support. They're part of the supporting cast. They're putting on a performance, and that's what these conventions have become now. That each speaker, they're basically nothing but a big staged performance. And the ultimate is the keynote. And of course, when the president comes and gives the nominee comes and gives the speech, the vice president, and now of course the first ladies, the wives are getting involved too. So this is just like a big Broadway production with music and this and that. And so we're never going to do that, right? Most of us are never going to get into, even sometimes when you go to these tech conferences, they also look like a real staged performance with blasting music and dancing girls. I don't know if they have dancing girls, but there's all kinds of stuff that goes on, like this Salesforce.com. So they're also trying to create a performance, but they also have to be like entertaining too. And one thing that he said in this speech that I thought was really interesting, and it does resonate with people. And of course, if you're not somebody who's going to go do a deep dive, you can say, wow, that makes a lot of sense. It's when he said about, when he goes through the litany of all the votes of John Kerry, not approving this weapon, not approving that weapon, all the weapons he listed. And then he said it's on and on and on. And like he's saying, there's so much here, I can't even go into it. But he says that 20 years of vote kind of tells you who you are deep inside. That 20 weeks is not going to tell you, that's when you want others to think what you are, right? So you can't just ignore the 20 years of vote and suddenly wipe it out with 20 weeks of campaigning. And I thought that was a very effective line because remember, he's a Democrat, so he caucuses with the Democrats. He knows, the impression is creating that he knows John Kerry because he's worked with him. And he's sort of doing this to save the country. That, look, I'm going against my party because saving the country is, remember he gives that example about Wendell Welke during the World War II, that he was happy to win the war than to win the election. And he's comparing himself to that politician during World War II, that I'm crossing across and give this message or give this speech because I value my country more than my party. And it does tend to resonate when it's like his ethos is very high here, right? We get back to the ethos, pathos, and logos. His ethos here is what's helping him with the speech, that he is a Democrat. He's not a Republican. So if a Democrat is saying that, then you got to think like, my God, this guy really knows John Kerry. He's from the same party. He caucuses with them. I mean, this must be true. And that's the message he gets across. And I thought that it was a very effective speech. Whether, you don't have to like him. It was very harsh. But from an effectiveness standpoint, I thought this was an extremely effective speech based on all the things that we typically look at. And again, this is history. And sometimes history can teach you a lot about the future. And when you look at this speech, you can see that his job was essentially to destroy John Kerry. And he accomplished that really well. Any closing thoughts, Julie?
Yeah, actually, what I recall was that Kerry actually had a pretty good chance until Edward's scandal imploded. He had an affair, he had a child, his wife had a chronic disease, and that really that was another factor that killed the
that actually, Julie, that happened afterwards.
Oh, it happened afterwards?
Yeah, that happened afterwards. Okay. That did not happen. There were no scandals at that time. Of course, John Edwards was also very green, and he was
right.
And he had run a good campaign. So John Kerry basically had to pick him as his vice presidential candidate. But these affairs and all that came later. In fact, when he was running in 2008, that's when it came up, not in 2004.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So you're right. You're just 4 years. 4 years ahead there.
Okay, so yeah, Okay, well, thank you.
All
That's
right, so I think at this point we're done with this, and I'll take a brief pause, and we'll get to the tour de force of political speeches, Bill Clinton's. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 22. My name is Jay Oza, and we're moving to segment number 3. And in this segment, we're going to look at, I think, probably one of the best political speech ever given. As far as like what you can learn from it, is Bill Clinton in 2012 when he's nominating Barack Obama as the next as the president to serve for the Democratic side for the next 4 years, the Democratic representative for the president's in 2012, and Bill Clinton's objective was to nominate. This is not a keynote speech. His objective is to nominate Obama. And typically, this type of speech is no more than 15 minutes long. Julie, can you mute your line, please?
You know what? I'm sorry. I did something and I don't have access to Hangout.
Yeah, I can see you.
I know you can see me, I can hear you, but I don't have a visual.
Oh, do you want to get
You
out
want
and
to
come?
invite me again?
Okay, yeah. So let's do that.
Okay, sorry about that.
I just sent you the invitation, so you may want to get out and get back in again.
Okay, I'm out. I have to wait for the invite. Okay, I can't even get out. Okay, I'm gonna have to hang up. I'm gonna have to exit the computer.
Okay, why don't you do that, and then I'll just wait, and
Sorry about that.
I can edit this out. Yeah, sure. I can still see you, so you still haven't gotten. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to restart it and start the whole segment again. Okay, so I'm going to take a brief pause and then just to start it again. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 22. My name is Jay Yoza, and we're moving to segment number 3. And in this segment, we're going to look at, I think it probably is one of the best political speech ever given as far as the speech is concerned and achieving the overall objective. And this was Bill Clinton in 2012 when he's nominating Barack Obama for the next president, in this case, re-electing Barack Obama in 2012. And this is not a keynote speech. And typically, when you're nominating a candidate, in this case, Obama, the speech is usually between 10 to 15 minutes long because that's all it's doing. He's just nominating him. But this is Bill Clinton, right? It turns into close to a 49-minute speech. So it's long. But if you watch this speech, you are really seeing master at work. There are so many things that Bill Clinton does well. First of all, I just wrote down some things, and I'm just going to point this out because we could spend hours and hours discussing this speech on what you can learn. I'm absolutely convinced that if you are interested in becoming a good speaker, and if you just watch this one speech before giving any speech, you'll become at least twice as good as you were before. Because what you're seeing here in Bill Clinton is somebody who is completely under control, somebody who's got experience, everything, ethos, pathos, logos, presence, everything that we've discussed, micro-targeting. The only thing that Bill Clinton doesn't do well, but of course it's Bill Clinton, he can get away with it, that the speech just goes on for 49 minutes. But the amazing thing is that he's still able to capture people's attention, even though the speech should not have been more than 10 to 15 minutes, and he almost tripled it, to 49 minutes. And I'll mention the 3 C's for this speech. 5 C's. This is a speech where if somebody tells you what are the things that you want to look for, command. He's in complete command of that stage. He's by himself, and he's just absolutely in command, and also he's under control. He never lets the speech, that's one of the reasons why I think it's 49 minutes. He never lets the speech go out of control, like, oh my God, I better finish this quickly. Hey, he's Bill Clinton. He's a 2-term president. He can take as much time as one. In fact, Obama is like standing in the back as at the end you see him coming over and they hug each other because Obama is very thankful. And I'll tell you why he was so thankful, because Bill Clinton had a very important role here. The third thing that he does extremely well, he's very comfortable, as you can see in this speech. He's like talking to you individually. This is Bill Clinton's forte. He's talking to people full of arena. But the way he's talking, you almost feel like, hey, he's talking to me directly, one-on-one. And he's making you comfortable. He's so comfortable out there. And of course, this is the hallmark, the fourth C is, he's so conversational. This is a speech, you get the feeling like that, you kind of at a water cooler and he's talking to you about why you should vote for Barack Obama. It is a masterpiece. This speech is absolutely a masterpiece, okay? I usually don't say that about a lot of speeches. This is a high-stakes speech. Bill Clinton's job is simple. He has to get Barack Obama elected in 2012. And the question is, how is he going to do it? And he does a masterful job. That's why this speech kind of solidified his reputation as explainer-in-chief. That's what it was. That prior to this, people thought like, oh my God, maybe they should elect Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney might be better for the country. After this speech, that perception changed completely. Bill Clinton completely changed the perception of the country, saying that, hey, you better stay the course with Obama, because Bill Clinton said it, and he explained it so well why Obama was the right choice for the next 4 years. And some of his logic, the way he explains it, is just amazing. And he explains like the Republican logic, saying, he has this southern way of saying that, we made a mess, and then we gave you, we elected Obama, but he didn't do it fast enough. That was the Republican logic. Okay, so that's the Republican logic. You know, he did a job, but it wasn't fast enough. So we gotta change the course. So he's giving the Republican logic. That's basically their logic. You know, after everything they said, all they're saying is, yeah, we left a mess, and Obama took over. But since he didn't do it fast enough, it's time to elect Romney. And he's saying, wait a second, does that even make any sense? And then he's giving the Obama logic, saying that, look, he inherited this mess, and he put a floor that it's not going to get any worse than that. And then he worked hard to gradually improve the economy and change everything. And, you know, we're now well positioned for the next 4 years. And that logic of Obama, he did a better job. He did the best job of explaining the logic of electing Obama. And Bill Clinton does something really interesting right off the beginning. And this is like the things that Bill Clinton does. You know, when he goes through in the beginning, says that, you know, I want a person who would like he says, like, I have a president in mind. The way he starts his speech is very interesting. It's very conversational. And then he goes through, like, I want a person who's cool on the inside, but who's burning on the outside, or something like that. And then the last thing he ends with is something that's unique with Bill Clinton. And he says, I want a man who had the good sense to marry Michelle Obama. And the audience just went crazy. This is what Bill Clinton is so good at, that he could have left that out and people wouldn't have, but he has this way of really connecting. And that is one of those lines that is so true, that, you know, that he's making Obama look good and he's making Michelle Obama feel really good. And you can see Michelle Obama's face, like, oh my God, this guy is so right. You're like, it's just, I love that line. Every time I watch that, I just like to see Michelle Obama's face when he says that, you know, and the way he says it, like, I want a man who had the good sense to marry Michelle Obama. But anyway, so the whole speech, he is going through it, you know, item by item on why Obama should be the president. And like I said, I could spend a lot of time going through the speech, but the thing that is so great about the speech is how comfortable he's on the stage. He doesn't rush anything. He goes through it logic by logic. And so this is a pretty heavy speech, actually. He brings in a lot of different topics here. And his job is to explain it so that everybody can say, oh, I get it. Like jobs. He says, well, let's look at it. The Democrats and Republicans. Republican, they created 24 million jobs. Under Democratic administration, 42 million jobs. And then he's comparing Obama to the Romney and to the Republican Party, and it says, you know, and he uses that zero, the way he says that zero, and he uses humor so well in that speech, and sometimes he even throws the Reagan line back at the Republican when he says, you know, there they go again. And the way he says that is so excellent. The audience just goes crazy. So at this point, I am going to shut up and I'm going to let Julie give her thoughts. But in closing, I'd like to say, before I hand it off to Julie, is that if you want to become a good speaker, like what a great speaker sounds like and does, this is the speech you want to watch, because Bill Clinton pretty much does everything well in this speech. You're looking at a master on top of his game here. Julie, any comments? Julie, can you hear me? Go ahead. I think we're having some technical difficulties with Julie's line. So until she gets on, I'll just keep on talking. I don't know whether she can even hear me. Julie, if you need another invitation, let me know. In the meantime, I will talk about some other things that Bill Clinton does really well. One of the things that he does, of course, we talked about the logic. And the other thing is that when he's making his point, he keeps telling the audience, listen to me now, listen to me now. So he's trying to just not say it, but he's kind of prefacing it. He's kind of leading them into it, saying, listen, I have something important to say. So listen to me now, the point that I'm about to make. And that's a very good technique, that if you got something important to convey, let the audience know that this is something that they ought to know. This is why I'm giving the speech. I'm here giving the speech, and I'm controlling it. And this part, I want you to listen to me closely. Then the other thing that he does is he really makes you feel like what he's that the way what he's feeling, and that what he's believing. And I think it was around the 21-minute mark when he says when he says that I really believe it. And that is a very important thing, the way he does that, that he's making the audience feel like what his to make them feel what he's feeling. Like he's absolutely convinced that Obama is the right person to elect for the next 4 years. And he's given all these reasons, and then he says, I believe it. I believe it. The way he says it, he explains it. And then he again uses these terminology that he wants them to listen carefully. And the part of it again there is that he wants the audience to know what is important for them to know. That there's a lot of that this is a long speech. He's talking for close to 49 minutes, and he kind of goes off script on this speech. The speech, I think, according to all estimates, was supposed to be no more than 15 to 20 minutes, and it went on for close to 49 minutes. And that's because he's feeding off the audience also. And you can tell that the audience is with him right from the beginning till the end, when Obama comes on stage. And it's like one of those speeches that I urge all of you to watch it over and over again, because there are just so many things that he does well in the speech. And obviously, he's performing, he's speaking to a large audience. But let's say you're not speaking to a large audience. This is a speech you could easily see that would work extremely well, even if he was giving it to, if he was speaking to you one-on-one, or speaking to you in a small group, that it wouldn't sound that much different. And obviously, the large audience makes it much better for him, because he's kind of feeding off them based on how they're reacting to what he's saying. And because of that, he goes off script. And that's Bill Clinton is known for that. That when he feels like the audience is resonating with the audience, then he actually gets into even top gear. And that's what you're seeing here. That he's there, and he has to really make these people get excited, believe in it. And I think that you can see that the audience is absolutely converted. They were already converted, but the way they're reacting to him, they're even more converted. Like, yeah, we already believed it, but we didn't hear it. He's validating their belief, essentially. And in the process, after he gave the speech, the perception of Obama being re-elected changed. Prior to the convention, because conventions give candidates bump, because you get everybody's saying good things about you, and you get that 1 week of attention that other party doesn't get. And prior to that, the perception was that he was vulnerable. After the speech that Bill Clinton gave, that perception changed. Suddenly, it was no longer that Obama was vulnerable. It was almost like Mitt Romney, unless Obama collapsed, he was definitely going to win the election. So this was a very interesting. Okay, 1 second. I have to invite Julie. This was a very interesting speech, and I'm going to wait a minute here and have Julie get on. Somehow she's having some technical difficulties. I wanted to get her thoughts on what she thought of this speech, since she's also uh, viewed it and has prepared to discuss it. So, like I said, we can spend a lot of time going through it, but what this speech shows is that if you have oh, Julie, you're back. I've been talking while you were trying to join, so why don't I let you just hand it off to you, and you can comment on this Bill Clinton's speech in 2012.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, again, just trying to keep onto the theme of the body language. He's kind of like the juiced up Obama. His body was very much in alignment with the message, and his eyes, his hands was all over the place. But we know that about Bill, and he actually used his index finger a lot, which is generally for us mere mortals. We are not recommended to do that. At one point, he uses his palms to go up. So I think his buoyancy was definitely there. His enthusiasm was there. He was also rocking back and forth. So again, for most people like us, we would be considered confusing or unstable. But again, like you said, he is the master of it, so he didn't have to follow some of the rules. And his voice was up, loud, but not too loud. And just as you said about Obama, Bill Clinton is very good at using his voice to connect to people. And finally, his eyes. He's looking at the audience, but he's not totally diffuse like Obama's eyes, and he's not like a laser sharp like Zell's eyes. His eyes are actually like soft and not a little less focused, but when he looks at an audience, you can feel that he's making that connection. This is in alignment with his speech of being buoyant, being connected. So of the three speakers, I would say that Bill Clinton is the one that connects most with his audience. And he did it through not just his voice, with his body posture. He also used his eyes in a way that is really amazing to me. And of course, like I said, he is bouncing all over the podium, but you almost feel like that's part of his enthusiasm, and you kind of connect with that. And he's very good at using the language to bring us into this frenzy of support for Obama. So again, he did use Obama's name a lot, as opposed to Obama's speech, which did not bring up Kerry's name at all. So language and the way it's used is very, very interesting, as well as the body gestures. In terms of timing, he used a lot of time just revving up the audience. So that's all I have for that one. Thanks.
Yeah, those are good points. I think one of the things that I noticed in this speech is that he's also very angry, but he's channeling his anger in a different way than Zell Miller does. Zell Miller anger is somewhat disingenuous, because his job is to just get George W. Bush elected no matter what. And Bill Clinton's anger is channeled in a different way, saying, listen, before you rush into voting for the other party, let me just explain what's going on here. And he's using logic in a very interesting way. He's not trying to scare the people about, like he even says in his speech, that Republicans are nice people, and he's very conciliatory. But he's explaining it, but let me just give you the logic, because he's really respecting the audience. And that's why I think this speech is very effective. He's not talking down to them like, if you don't do this, then something bad will happen, or this will happen, or that will happen. And he's like very, like a reasonable guy, like, hey, let me just explain it to you, what's really going on here before you go out and vote. And I thought that was very effective, the way he does that. He's not, and again, we can spend hours talking about the speech and how he starts, and that finger. I think body language in some cases tends to be a little bit overrated, in my opinion. We all think like we can figure out people from their body language. It's true in some cases when it's inconsistent with the message. But if the message is so dominating, then the body language, like if somebody's a bad speaker, immediately we'll look at the body language. But if somebody's a good speaker, then we will not look at these things that you just mentioned about using his finger and doing something else, because the message is so compelling that the body language is not dominating anymore. But the body language will tend to dominate more if it suddenly becomes the point where the speaker is just not that interesting. Then you look at the body language saying, okay, is the body language going to save him? And most likely the body language will not save him. Obviously, you want them to be congruent. But in Bill Clinton's case, like you said, typically you don't use your finger like that. But he has that habit. But in his case, if you are a Democrat, you like that. Like, this guy is so convincing, right? So I think, I don't know, so it's something that we should have a discussion at some time on the body language. Is it that important, or is it somewhat, like I always say, that when you see a car moving, you see the body, but the car also has an engine, right, that makes the car move, but it also needs a lot of gas for it to get from point A to point B. But what you end up seeing is the body, right? But at the end, the car wouldn't move if you don't have gas or an engine. So anyway, that's my little... Any closing thoughts, Julie? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to unmute. Yeah, so obviously political speech is not an area that I've studied, so I'm very happy that you presented it to me, and I think I will go back and watch the speeches again, now that we talked about it. And I think that your point that the persuasive speech is really highly tuned in a political speech is really interesting. In terms of body language, I agree with you that it's not the end all and be all. It's just that for me, I like to study one thing at a time. And so I decided to pick that as a topic. As I picked timing, and maybe I'll pick something else next week. But your point is well taken. Thanks.
Yeah, and again, everybody perceives a speech in a different way. So there's no right or wrong answer here. So when somebody says I'm an expert, there's no expert. It's like music. Either you like it or you don't like it. There's no such thing as like, oh, you gotta like Beethoven. Oh, you gotta like Mozart. No, if you like Taylor Swift and you don't like Beethoven, that doesn't mean that Beethoven is bad or good. As far as you're concerned, you like Taylor Swift over Beethoven. That's it. I can't try to convince you and saying, hey, Julie, you gotta like Beethoven. You don't understand how good that music is. So speeches are like that. At the end, how you perceive it. And that doesn't mean you don't try to understand more about it, right? Like, you should try to understand Beethoven and what makes Beethoven so great. But at the same time, I should also try to understand what makes Taylor Swift so great too. So anyway, I think we're pretty much done, Julie. So thanks a lot for joining. I really appreciate the time you put into this preparing for this show. And any last word before we close this program?
No, thanks for your patience with tech problems today.
Yeah, I'll edit some of that out, but that's okay. That's what happens. We're not. This is not a high-priced studio that we're running and doing this from. One day that can happen, but that's not happening today. All right, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next week. Okay,
yeah,
bye.
Okay, bye.